Hey, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show. I'm your host, Steve Olensky. Part marketing practitioner, part ad agency veteran, part journalist. I was a writer for Forbes for 10 years. I've had so many insightful conversations over the years with business leaders, to athletes, to celebrities, to, of course, CMOs. The only difference now is instead of sharing those insights through written form, I'm doing it this way. My guest this week is John Jorgenson, CMO at Cambium Learning Group. John spent his first 7 years at Cambium leading marketing for two of its brands, where he helped grow Learning A to Z into its largest division. Now, as Enterprise CMO, he works alongside Cambium's executive team to shape strategy, creativity, and culture. But what sets John apart is his vision, not just to advance education, but to empower his colleagues to do their very best work. From scaling brands to guiding enterprise vision, John's blend of marketing expertise and people-first leadership makes him a compelling voice in EdTech. John Jorgenson, welcome to the CMO Whisper Show.
Oh, thanks, Steve. Thanks for that delightful introduction. It's great to be here.
You are very welcome, my friend. I am very much looking forward to this conversation. I want to jump right in about the growing scale and impact of EdTech and relationship building. So EdTech has kind of gone from nice to have to really mission critical in K-12, right? So from your seat as CMO, how have you seen the role of EdTech evolve in scale and impact over the past few years?
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. I think that EdTech certainly didn't start with the pandemic. EdTech had been growing rapidly for years leading up to it. But when the pandemic happened, suddenly we had an entire nation and entire world that was needing to figure out how to keep learning going, even when kids and teachers weren't able to come to school. So there was just a flood of EdTech products that were being utilized, being developed, and educators were just trying to keep learning going. And for a lot of them, it was all new for them. So EdTech really exploded during the pandemic. As we have come out of the pandemic, there's almost a pendulum swing in the other direction, saying, when we had to figure things out to do learning virtually, we were just trying everything that we could possibly try. And now we're at a point where we need to limit that. We need to simplify our classrooms. We need to simplify our district administration offices. And so we have to focus on the partners that first of all are actually work against the challenges that are most important to us, but also partners that we can trust. And so there's this in the last few years in particular, EdTech has continued to grow, but grow in a more consolidated sort of way where educators are looking for fewer partners, fewer platforms, trying to simplify their classrooms, because otherwise it's just become too much to manage, too difficult to manage. So it's continued to grow, continued to be an increased need for EdTech, but has sort of begun to evolve coming out of the pandemic.
Are you sensing, what's the word? And now it's amazing, by the way, we're still saying coming out of the pandemic. It was 5 years ago, right? And we're still feeling it, right?
That's right.
But are you sensing, is there reluctance? Is there, and is that reluctance, based on, well, only this type of district has reluctance or this type of person, or is there that reluctance to admit and to acknowledge the world has forever changed?
I don't think so. I think that technology is just it's so ubiquitous in our lives, and it's become such even ubiquitous in classrooms. So it doesn't mean that there isn't a need for direct human contact and teaching and instruction. That is always going to be needed and is still needed as much as ever. But how technology can help that teacher manage a classroom, have better insight into each student to really understand not just if they get an answer right or wrong, but why they're getting it right, why they're getting it wrong, more personalized learning paths. There's so much that is possible through technology, again, that make both efficiencies and learning that can be different, that it's really being embraced everywhere, certainly more so than others in terms of innovation and things like AI and machine learning. Those are things that are just continuing to explode and have a much bigger impact on how teachers are thinking about running their classrooms, making sure that they're able to reach each student. So I don't think, even though there's more of an appetite in some places than others for kind of cutting edge innovation. I think technology as part of the classroom, as part of a school district, that's not something that is going in the other direction at all. Despite the desire for simplification, for, trying to kind of button up partnerships and things like that to have fewer partners, it's not changing the appetite.
Yeah, exactly. It's interesting. You said something, I might be paraphrasing, but I love it. You said relationships are central to solving problems in education.
Yeah, that's right.
I love that. Elaborate on that.
Yeah. So I think that when EdTech started, the boom of the internet and a bunch of EdTech companies started to pop up. A couple of, some Cambium companies were sort of came up as the internet was coming to life. There was invariably, as with all technology, there was concern that, is this going to replace teachers? Is there a belief that technology will be all that we will need? I think it's, what's interesting is as the technology continues to get more advanced and smarter and more capable, I don't see any change in the need for human contact, for human teachers that are really seeing the student and making sure that they are giving them everything that they need. And they're not just assuming that technology can replace them. So I think that's something that is, to me, getting even more important. Making sure that we've got seasoned professional teachers that really understand how technology can be used and are using it the best that they can to help them do what they're doing. But it's just that it's kind of it's an accelerant for what they're doing. It's not something to replace them. That said, there are all sorts of things that they are looking to technology to take off of their plates so that they can focus more on that one-to-one interaction with students.
It's definitely a kind of a very interesting dynamic, right? And my daughter is a teacher, and I've talked to her about having that balance, if you will, of, using technology, AI, but also maintain that human touch.
Yeah. I think, and we're all wrestling with it. We're wrestling with it in the business world to say, what makes sense. And you've got info security concerns. You've got concerns about just creating the best possible output. And I think that as AI gets better, there will be more things that do fall into that category of, yes, AI can really help us with this thing. It doesn't mean it's going to be a panacea that helps us solve every problem and replaces every job. But I think it is something that is evolving so rapidly that it's kind of difficult to even keep up with. And so in education is just, education sits within our world, right? And so education is dealing with that same, what do we do next? What's happening? How's this changing? How can it help me? Just like we are as business professionals and just as consumers.
The education sector is not exactly known for stopping on a dime, right? And moving at warp speed. So in a sector that's, known as moving slowly, how do you balance that rapid scale of innovation, especially in the AI age, with those real world day-to-day needs that schools and districts need? That's
right. Okay. So, great question. And absolutely education is, not at the absolute cutting edge of innovation, but is innovating. I think the thing that is becoming increasingly important, and it's something that you can see reflected in headlines and, the ongoing, testing of American students to see how they're doing against the rest of the world, how they're doing historically, there continue to be challenges. And so you look at these kind of key areas of literacy, of math, of science. These are foundational pieces of K-12 education, which are necessary, good indicators for how kids are going to do kind of continuing on in K-12 education, but then as they go on to college and to careers. And so there is I think as we're looking at technology playing an even more a deeper role and a wider role in K-12 education, I think that there's also at the same time more of a focus on those key areas. So what are like those existential generational challenges that K-12 education continues to deal with? Literacy proficiency, math proficiency, science proficiency. These are things that are ongoing generational problems. So there is an even greater emphasis on how can we take this technology and this innovation and focus it on these big challenges that we have, as opposed to just going off in all these different directions. I think a lot of the companies that came to life during the pandemic and coming out of the pandemic, the ones that are falling away are the ones that don't really have a great solution or play a part in a solution against those big challenges. They might be something that's really engaging. fun for students, or goes into something that's a real kind of niche sort of part of education. But the ones that are really thriving and are scaling are the ones that are focused very intentionally on those big educational challenges.
Okay, so a lot of my audience are CMOs and marketing leaders and business leaders, and I'm going to give you the stage, and they're listening to this, and I'm going to ask a question on behalf of them. I say, John, this all sounds great. What can you do to help me when I go to hire the right people, knowing that they're going to be, and we talked about this off air, the durable skills, right? I need help. I need help to know that when I'm hiring people, they have the book smarts, but these other skills they're not getting. What would you say to a group of CMOs and business leaders?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think it's so tempting to make hiring decisions as you're building a team and you're making hiring decisions. It's easy to think, oh, I need to go out and find this resume and that experience and that education. And certainly those are all important things, right? You have to have people that have been there, done that have a background that is going to be what's needed. But, I think increasingly, and this is something that I'm seeing a lot with my organization and with people in my network, there's much more of an emphasis on other skills, so how can you make sure you're finding not just qualified people, well-educated people, experienced people, but the right people for your team? It comes down to culture. It's no different than, we were also talking off air about football for a few minutes. And you think about how culture is so important in building an organization and building a team. I think it's the same thing with business and with marketing teams. You have to find people that really, believe in the things that you're trying to do and are excited to be there and be a part of it and help you develop it. So you look at qualities like, is this person, do they have natural curiosity? Do they have a positive kind of team focused, put my ego off to the side while I try to figure out just how I can help evolve this team and to advance this purpose through what I'm doing? It's looking for those kinds of people. And a lot of that kind of comes down to gut in some ways, but it's also just asking the right questions to better understand, is this the right person for this team? And I think that's always been important, of course, but I think especially now, we're in, a digital age like no other. We at Cambium, we're a remote first company where we all work remotely. So that ability to have those skills to connect with people that you're not spending physical time with all the time, that requires a different set of skills. And so I think it's being really discerning, that there's that old adage of, hire slow, fire fast. You have to be really intentional about the people you're bringing on board and make sure they're the right fit. And if they're not, even if they've got a great resume and great experience and great education, be willing to move off of that person if it's not going to be what your team needs. Exactly.
I think you used the term in the past. I don't know. I won't give you credit for coining it, but brand bravery, right? And if you did coin it, God love you, you should trademark. But I love that term, but it can mean a lot of different things. And I want to hear what it means for you.
Yeah, I certainly did not coin that phrase. I don't know where I heard it. But in terms of brand bravery, I think this is more of an organizational idea where I think it's tempting to look at opportunities and say, could this product or idea or service or hire, could it help us grow in the short term? And, sometimes the answer to that is absolutely yes, it could, but that doesn't mean it's the right decision. I think the brand bravery comes where you're willing to say no to those things, or you're willing to push back on ideas that aren't in alignment with what your brand is here to deliver. And the easier said than done, right? Especially in difficult times where growth is not something to take for granted, and you're looking for all possible ways that your organization can be of value to the markets you're serving, or potentially new markets. I think it's really tempting to say, oh, well, people are asking for this, so let's give it to them. Mm-hmm. Well, that isn't always the best decision for your brand. I think I think the longer term value that your brand can deliver is dependent on you being true to what that brand stands for, why it exists, why people would be devastated if it wasn't there anymore. Yep. And being brave enough to say no, being brave to stick to, this is what we're all about. Now, the kind of magic in that is also not becoming complacent and saying, or stubborn or rigid, and being willing to do new things. So the way that we think about this at Cambium is we have a purpose. The purpose is what guides the entire organization, all of the businesses that make it up. And that purpose is intentionally lofty and also very wide. So the purpose is to help all teachers and students to feel seen, valued, and supported. So all decisions we make at a product level, at a hiring level, they are all designed to support that purpose. Now, we have to remain committed to that purpose. We have to be very brave to not stray from it. But how we get there, how we deliver on that purpose, we have to be willing to question and change all of that if that's what's required. So to me, the brand Bravery is about being brave enough to remain focused on the purpose that you are here to deliver, but being willing a bit, but also being brave to change everything else and not become so rigid to say, well, we don't do it that way, or we're not that kind of company. We've never done that before. Being willing to change everything other than your purpose. I think so. The bravery kind of goes in both directions, brave enough to stick with and brave enough to venture away from.
I would imagine you're the type of leader that says to their team, come at me with all your ideas, but be prepared to explain how it fits into the overall purpose.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's at the Cambium, at the parent level, and also within the businesses. Each of the businesses have their own purposes and their own mission for how they're going to get there, their how for how they're going to deliver on that why. But it always has to be, you always have to be mindful of the purpose itself and be willing to look at the purpose in the case of Cambium to say, seeing and valuing and supporting teachers and students, that also applies to us. That applies to how we work together and how we treat each other. And so that how, I think, is really important. I get frustrated, and I'm guessing you might as well, where a lot of companies, and education is as much in this category as any other, where the why of, helping students and helping teachers, they think that that's everything and that's all that they need. And that's going to be what really motivates people and gives them direction. But if you don't have an answer to the question of, okay, that's great, but how are you going to do that? How are you going to do that in a way that is effective, differentiated? And if you don't have clarity around that, it's going to be really difficult to then have that through line go to all of your businesses and teams to make sure that they're constantly thinking to themselves, all right, before we make this decision or make this investment, is it going to help that purpose be stronger, or is it going in the other direction? And so that filter is kind of a built-in that we're constantly reminding folks of.
Yeah. So every company goes through the ebbs and flows, right? Good quarter, bad quarter, whatever. But you still have to stay loyal, if you will, to that promise, right, to your customers, which in your case are educators and students. As a CMO, right, you have to, how do you stay in that, hold on, I got to tighten my belt a little bit, but I can't sacrifice the purpose. How do you do that?
Yeah, I mean, it can be challenging, right? Like, I think it's difficult to make decisions in the moment, that especially if you're dealing with kind of short-term challenges. But I think that a lot of it comes down to trust and trust in the leaders that you have, that you're all rowing in the same direction, that you all understand kind of how we're approaching this and being a purpose-driven organization, and trusting that even though there are short-term challenges, that in the long term, this is the right thing. And I think one of the things that I really believe in and I talk a lot about is a belief in abundance. And I know that sounds like a bit of a new age kind of idea, but I think the idea is that if we are doing the right things against the challenges that we feel are the right challenges for us to be focused on, in our case, it's those generational challenges that I mentioned. I trust that if we stay focused on those things, that we will continue to be of value, continue to find a way to grow as an organization as a result of staying focused on that purpose.
Right.
So it's something that, and I can say that I believe in the abundance and I have a faith in it, not just because I believe in it, but because that's exactly how Cambium has grown, for 20 plus years, is staying focused. I mean, there's so many things that we say no to and that we don't pursue because they just aren't in alignment with the purpose, and they're not something that we feel that we can deliver better than anybody else. And so by staying focused on that, I think we're able to kind of weather the short-term difficulties. I mean, this has been a tough year. It's been tough coming out of the pandemic, where funding has become more challenged, and certainly a lot of uncertainty around, the world around us and what it's going to mean for education and education funding. So, we're having to navigate all of that. But again, we're looking for new ways of delivering on a fixed purpose.
One of the things I want to go back to is I said something in the beginning when I was bringing you on about your vision is not just to advance education, which we've clearly touched on and we will more, but you have this responsibility to empower your colleagues to do their best work. What does that look like in practical application?
Yeah, well, not to talk too much about purpose, but I think it starts there. It's to say, look, we believe this purpose applies to us. And so I want everyone in our organization to feel seen, valued, and supported. Not only happens when you trust people to do what you've hired them to do and have constructive conversations, which can be, heated at times if there's disagreement about how we get there. I think the other part of it, though, is, so I'll just tell you a quick story. So a couple of years, 3 or 4 years ago, I had been going to this regular annual investor conference. And every time I would go, I would, look up at the registration list and say, oh, are there other CMOs that are going to be there? I need just to get to know each other. And over the course of doing that, I got to know the CMOs of all of the scale organizations in the EdTech space. And we got to know each other personally and created kind of a bit of a network. But then we decided, you know what? These educational challenges that we're all dealing with, none of us, even the biggest, most scaled businesses in our space, are going to be able to solve these problems by ourselves. And so we need to start thinking differently. We need to start thinking about us as a collective. How can we do things together and start collaborating together, even as competitors? How can we start thinking about what we can do together that we can't do individually? And to me, the only way to start that kind of really grand, ambitious kind of idea is to start talking to each other and get to know each other and build trust with each other. I ended up creating a CMO collective of EdTech CMOs, which is now 20 plus CMOs and marketing leaders. We meet every single month, and we just had a meeting yesterday actually to talk through something. But we're in regular contact with each other, not to talk about how we compete with each other or creating collaborative products together or anything quite like that. It's more about just how can we think about the bigger goal, which really is, yes, we're businesses, we're trying to grow, we're trying to do good work, but ultimately we're trying to have an impact against those educational challenges. So are there ways we can start thinking about that together? We're just getting started with that. It's a very slow process because it's complicated, but I think that kind of thinking is going to be what finally makes an impact on these challenges, is if we start thinking about how can we do some things together that otherwise we've been trying to just outcompete each other and kind of emerge as the winner from. And I think that's going to be not just in the education space, but education is a great example because we all have the same purpose at the end of the day. It's to help students and teachers and to get better results for them and better opportunities for them. And so to me, that's one way that I'm trying to contribute to that, not just with my direct colleagues, but I think of all of them as colleagues in kind of a bigger sense.
Yeah. And I'll say it for you. Kudos to you for starting that, because it is so important, especially when we're talking about education. But you're right. It does permeate into other industries. Like, for example, I would love to see CMOs of healthcare do the same thing. Right. And put their patients' best interests front and center. So kudos to you for doing that. Oh,
thank you. Yeah. And I agree. I think it extends to lots of industries. Education, I think, is a real central one, just because we all have, we all went to school. We all have kids that go to school. We all live in communities where we're dependent on those kids learning what they need to learn so that we can continue to grow as a society. So, healthcare is a great call out as sort of a comp to that.
Yeah. What are some of your, off the top of your head, some leadership lessons you think have stayed with you over the years, either from mentors or even mistakes you've made? What are some lessons you want to share?
Yeah, I think one mistake I've made multiple times, and I'm still learning it. Because I'm passionate and I'm, trying to have an impact. Sometimes I have just needed to slow down, not slow down and to go slower, but slow down to just bring more people along. So I think that, yes, I'm hired to do a job. I'm expected to be kind of a decision maker in a lot of ways, but how I go about that decision making is changing over time. And I'm not to a point where it's becoming kind of, every decision is made by committee, but it certainly is taking more time to get feedback, especially before a project kicks off. I really learned that at one company where I was hired to kind of reinvigorate a brand and kind of bring it to market and kind of reimagine it. And it was a brand with great legacy and great history. And the people that were there were really passionate, smart people. And but really didn't know how to go about doing that. And it could have been easy for me to just jump in and say, okay, well, I've done this. Don't worry, I'll handle it. I'll bring branding folks to the table. We'll get this work done. Well, I really ended up spending the first, several months just going and spending time with the team and better understanding their perspective on, who is this business and why are you so passionate about it? And why do you think it's a special place? And just by doing that kind of active listening and just, again, it goes back to the curiosity I mentioned before. I was just curious about their perspective. That then made, once we took all of that and added it to other discovery we did and actually got to the creative side of things, it just made all of that flow because they were already a part of it. Their voice was already being reflected in it. And so that's something that took time in my career to really understand and to value in a way that now is something that's just mission critical for any big project like that.
Exactly. I'm looking at the time here. So I want to end it with, if you've listened to any of my episodes, John, I end every episode what's called the Random 5. I ask you 5 random to get to know you as a person. And if you're game, here we go.
Let's do it.
Number 1, what's your go-to way to recharge outside of work?
I think it's one of the bits of advice I got early in my career was, spend a lot of time, work really, really hard thinking about how you're going to solve a problem, and then just, put it in a drawer and then go off and do something just totally different. So I think, and that's difficult to do, right? It's hard to turn your brain off and it's hard to have that discipline. But I think that for me is what I try to do is, and it's increasingly difficult as we're more connected and all working remotely and everything else. But I try to just put everything off to the side and get out, whether it's going for a long walk with my wife, whether it's going on a trip somewhere and trying to just be present in those places, because that then is what leads me to things opening up in terms of the problem I was trying to solve.
Okay. What was your very first job and what did it teach you that you still apply today?
Oh, wow. So very first job that was kind of a real job at a real company was bagging groceries at a grocery store in El Paso, Texas, which is where I lived for a couple of years in high school. And what's amazing is I in some ways, everything that we've been talking about, I learned there. And what I mean by that is it taught me to really, see value and support people in the moment. And I know that sounds like a silly thing, but the way that you can just connect with people, a lot of times, there are people that go to the grocery store and that's their big outing for the week. If they're retired and, looking someone in the eye, a smile, asking them how they're doing, really taking care with how you're arranging the things in their bag and taking pride in doing a good job with that moment by moment, person by person. That's something that I felt in a job like that. And it's something certainly my parents taught me that, but then to bring that to life in a job like that. And that's something that I've tried to carry with me in every job since.
I'm not making this up, but my very first job was bagging groceries or bringing in shopping carts.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
and it taught me, like you're saying, even those most basic fundamental as a 16-year-old relationship skills.
Right. Yeah. It's, I wait a table, same kind of thing. It taught me how to, juggle a million things all at once, but at the same time, be there to serve someone else. I think that idea of service in the case of bagging groceries, getting shopping carts, taking groceries out to cars. That's something that that idea of being of service is something that I've tried to really cultivate and bring with me.
Yep. Who would you say has been the most influential role model in your life?
That really has to be my mom. My mom passed away when I was quite young adult. And so I remember one time in college, and it wasn't like her to do this. She was a very kind of no nonsense person, but she sat me down on the couch and we were just talking and she said, what's the most important quality to you that for people to have? And of course I was, 18, 19 at the time. I said, passion, be passionate about something and follow it. And she said, okay. And I said, what about you? And she said, passion's, that's important. But as I get older, kindness is something that I think is really what matters more than anything else. And that connects to what we just talked about. I never forgot that. And that idea of kindness, how you are with people is something that is, if I'm not focused on that, nothing else really matters. So that was a great lesson that she taught me.
If you could instantly master one new skill outside of marketing.
I think the stock answer of better understanding AI and how it can change our lives is probably something that you're hearing a lot of from folks. and certainly because it's evolving so quickly, I don't think there's anybody that is, an expert in AI and where it's going. But every day I continue to realize that this is something that it can really change how we do everything. What's difficult is, and I guess the irony of it is, I'm so busy. Like there's so much going on all the time that to really explore it, dig into it, go out and talk to people about it is something I'm not able to spend as much time as I would like. And I feel like that's something that is going to become just foundational to most everything going forward. So would really love to spend more time on that.
What would be your dream job be if you weren't doing this role? Athlete, for example, movie star?
So dream job, if I wasn't doing this role, I would not want to be a movie star. I would not want to be a celebrity in any form. I think in some ways it's not that different than what I'm doing. I think it would be great to, in sort of a consultative way, just go to different organizations and look for ways that I can help them better understand what their purpose is and how they can bring that to life. And so a lot of the work that I do on a day-to-day basis, I love doing it for an organization, and it's constantly changing. And I love the kind of long-term nature of it, but it would be a lot of fun to do that in shorter bursts to try to just kind of help people get on the path. I mean, a lot of the brand projects we do now, there's all of this work that's done, but then ultimately you're kind of turning things over to a team that over the course of the years to follow need to help bring it to life and evolve it. And so I think that playing that part of kind of getting people on the path and up on the horse and then headed in the right direction and then moving on to help somebody else, I think that would be a lot of fun too.
Love it. Well, John Jorgenson, CMO of the Cambium Learning Group, my new friend. Thank you so much for being a guest on the show.
Thank you, Steve. It was great to be here.
Well, that wraps up another episode of the CMO Whisperer Show. I hope you shared this episode with your friends. And if you have not already, please subscribe to be kept up to date on all the latest episodes. And if you're so inclined, leave me a review on your favorite podcast platform. Thank you.